Hi, my name is Hunter Lovins. I'm here today to talk to you about the sustainability journey. When companies begin to implement more sustainable practices, they're a bit like these tool boys drawing equations on the blackboard. In the middle, there is this big gap where you just assume that something will happen. And it's right to say, I think you need to be a little more explicit here in step two. A miracle won't just happen. Sustainability has to be implemented within a company. We're going to look at what has been called the sustainability journey and talk some about the major tools that practitioners have developed to implement sustainability. Bob Willard's 7-step process, Bill Blackburn's sustainability operating system, Bob Doppel's The Wheel of Change. And then we'll look at how to combine these, how to use them to benchmark where your company is against itself and against other companies. So we'll talk about the sustainability journey first, then the operating system, and then the Wheel of Change. In the sustainability journey, we'll talk first about the approach we call natural capitalism. Then Willard's sustainability advantage. We'll combine these and rank some companies. Natural capitalism was first set out in the book by the same title. It has three basic principles of application. That first, you buy time, you push back all those drivers of change by using all resources dramatically more productively. And if you look at the companies that have been implementing sustainability, this is primarily what they're doing, implementing various forms of eco-efficiency. The second step, though, is to redesign how we make and deliver all products and services, because the way we're doing it now is unsustainable. We do this using approaches like biomimicry, asking how would nature do business, and radical sustainable manufacturing. And then the circular economy, so that nothing is thrown away. The economy becomes a closed loop. The third principle is to manage all institutions to be regenerative of human and natural capital, the forms of capital that are in short supply. Now, these are the overriding principles that we believe should guide a company in implementing sustainability. But again, you need to be a little more specific. Bob Willard, who worked for a time for IBM, now teaches companies and people how to implement more sustainable practices, has put forth a couple of books, The Sustainability Advantage and The Next Sustainability Wave, in which he walks through these approaches, describes the business case for implementing more sustainable practices. And on his website, which is displayed here, you can get spreadsheets to enable you to plug in your own numbers and play with them and see if this works out to be a business case for you. Bob describes the iceberg of company value, that what shows up on the balance sheet is really only a small part of the real value of the company. In the early days, in the 1980s and before that, it was believed that what you could count, what you could hang on to, the tangible assets, were what gave value to a company. So its machines, its trucks, its tools. The non-tangibles were a small part of it, goodwill of a company. This shifted in the late 90s and has been shifting ever more since then. So, for example, what is the value of Microsoft? It's certainly not the desks and the buildings. It's the intellectual property. It's the intellectual capital that the company has. It's the belief of the market, in what the company is capable of doing. So Tesla, the electric car manufacturer, has half the market capitalization of General Motors, despite selling 300 times fewer cars. The value of the company is in people's belief in the value that the company can create going forward. Now, with the public, with consumers, with the government realizing that climate change is real, we're dealing with, if not global warming, global weirding, all of the environmental concerns, companies are recognizing that their commitment to behaving more sustainably is a corporate asset. And if you look at the risks facing companies, failure to address these risks can mean the end of the company. Bob suggests that there are 7 steps to implementing sustainability in a company. First of all is the decision to do it, the recognition that business as usual is no longer a good strategy in a world in which we're losing every major ecosystem. You need to inspire a vision and share that vision across the company. Sometimes this comes from the CEO, sometimes it comes from lower down in the company, and the change agent has to upsell senior management to understand why it's in the company's interest to implement this. Assess the current realities. Many companies are already doing many sustainable practices, again, simply because it's good business. So getting a sense of what you're doing that's working, what you're doing that's not working so well, and where your opportunities lie is very important. Then, of course, you develop the strategies and build the case for change. People can have a vision, they can understand that they need to change, but until they understand what's in it for them, why this is critical to their job at the company, the company's ability to continue to pay them, the company's ability to survive in this world, there will be resistance to change. Then you mobilize commitment and embed these more sustainable practices and align them with the company's way of doing business. Bob describes a 5-stage sustainability journey. Some companies are what we might call pre-compliant. That means they're illegal. And if you look at companies that regularly get environmental fines levied against them, that have big oil spills, that spill coal ash, that are otherwise engaged in fundamentally unsustainable practices, these companies are at risk. They're at risk of losing their franchise to operate. They're certainly at risk of increased cost. For many years, it was thought that a good company obeyed the law. The policymakers set policy, the companies abided by them, and that's what it meant to be a good corporate citizen. Many companies still believe this is the only job of the company management, is to follow the laws. These companies are losing an enormous business opportunity. The smarter companies are going beyond compliance. They are getting out ahead of the regulation by implementing energy efficiency, resource productivity, by being proactive in understanding the kinds of regulations that will be coming at them, and by innovating better ways of doing business so that the regulations are no longer relevant to them. They're beyond compliant. Really smart companies are integrating sustainability into everything that they're doing, understanding the business case and capturing this enhanced business value by looking across all of their operations and ensuring that in everything that they do, they are as sustainable as possible. Bob argues, though, that the really sweet spot is when the entire company is aligned around a vision of sustainability, championed by a values-driven founder, CEO. The top management gets it, they're committed to it, they include it in the budget, it's part of the job of the chief financial officer, and they understand the business value, but they understand why it really matters. They care about it. It is their purpose. If you look at each of these steps, when you're pre-compliant, you're just trying to make as much money as you can. You really don't care how. When you're compliant, you obey the law. You take care of people to the extent required by the law, but you don't go any further beyond that. Beyond compliance, you're moving from being a defensive company to offense, to implementing these measures even though they're not required because they're saving you money. When you're integrating it, you're beginning to see the core business value that sustainability brings to all of your operations, and beginning to integrate these activities with all of the stakeholders, not just the management, but the employees, the customers, the community. This is now an integrated operation because the company understands that sustainability is key to its ability to meet its purpose. And then finally, when the senior management is doing this because this is what they believe in, this is the right thing to do, then a sustainability program becomes a great deal easier to operate. Bob has laid out a set of numbers that companies that are implementing more sustainable practices have an easier time attracting and retaining the best talent. They have higher employee productivity. In fact, there are now studies showing up to 18% higher worker productivity when the workers are able to be implementing more sustainable practices as part of their day job. But let's pick a conservative number of 10%. Cutting expenses in the basic operations and in how you run your facilities. Better branding, better market share, lower costs. These 7 are only about half of the benefits that we've counted in what we call the integrated bottom line. But even taking very conservative assumptions, they will increase profitability by 38%. And again, if you download Bob's spreadsheets, you can plug your own numbers in. Take the numbers that you think are right for your company and see the increase in profitability that committing to a sustainability program can provide for you. The sustainability champion is, and you'll see this throughout all of these approaches, is a key person in enabling this to happen. You've got to be credible, and you've got to stay credible. You have to be good at talking to people, at collaborating, at educating, networking, at talking to people in the company where they are, not necessarily where you are, where your beliefs are. By piggybacking on what's already underway in the company, knowing who it is that people in the company look to, who are the influencers, and then influencing them, and practicing planful opportunism. You can't just sit and wait for the opportunity to arise, but if you've thought ahead about what are the opportunities, how can you work with them, and you have a plan, this is where you have the greatest ability to influence the change in a company. What happens when you combine Bob's approach with our approach of natural capitalism? Well, the first 2 steps are business as usual. You're really not doing either of these approaches. At stage 3, the eco-efficiency strategies are seen to enhance shareholder value through all of the aspects of an integrated bottom line. Integrating it, you're capturing the value from the sustainability initiatives across all of the stakeholders. We would add the fifth step of redesigning how it is that you make and deliver the product that your company sells, and begin to introduce this concept of a values-based commitment. Because in the sixth stage, where you are committing to being a regenerative company, in everything that you do, you are enhancing the world around you and the people with whom you come in contact. What does it look like when you start doing this in companies? We've drawn this graph to show the increase in sustainability performance, the 6 stages. Take a company like Chegg. They have educational products. They have a pretty good mission statement: help the students save time, money, and get smarter. That they can be a catalyst for change in education, in the environment, in the community. They call it Chegg for Good. What is it? Well, it's a mission statement. When you look at what Chegg actually does to implement its mission statement, it's a little bit of philanthropy. They give some money to plant trees. Now, there's nothing wrong with trees, but they aren't looking at their own operations at all. They have not defined a strategy. They don't have clearly communicated objectives, goals. So let's put Chegg here at somewhere between compliance and a little bit beyond compliance. They understand that this is important, but they aren't really doing much about it. Peter Kiewit and Sons does road construction. They have a mission statement that talks about environmental compliance, taking green to the next stage. It's the right thing to do. Now, here's a company that is beginning to introduce the values component. What are they doing? They have specific sustainability initiatives at the job sites, but it isn't integrated throughout the company. And they're not tracking the value that their commitment to sustainability is giving to the company. Employees aren't evaluated on whether or not their behavior is more or less sustainable. And as a result, it's a little hard for Kiewit to really talk about their successes in the area. So, okay, they're a little bit beyond compliance. Baxter Healthcare. Sustainability is our approach to integrate all of our responsibilities with the company's business priorities. They have an annual sustainability report. They have integrated sustainability into their accounting system, into their financials. They have a whole array of areas that they are tracking on sustainability, 9 priorities, corresponding goals set for several years in the future. It's all part of the company's strategy. It is driven by executive level steering committee. So Baxter is going to be an integrated company. And we've talked before about Ray Anderson's interface. They redesigned how they made their carpet. They redesigned how they delivered it. They hired Janine Benyus to teach the company how to do biomimicry. They are seeking to have zero impact, zero footprint in everything they're doing. They're having an integrated strategy, and they're redesigning. They have not yet made it to a stage where they are restorative or regenerative, but it is their commitment to get there. Can you think of a company that is regenerative in everything that it does? It's hard to think of. There are very few of them out there, but that ought to be a goal for all of us as we work with companies, to enable them to become truly regenerative of all forms of capital. And it's not easy to do. Let's talk about the Sustainability Operating System. This is an approach set forth in Bill Blackburn's book, The Sustainability Handbook. As you can see, it is a massive tome. It is not bedtime reading. It is a reference book that should sit on your desk, that you turn to once you've gained a familiarity with what Blackburn is saying. He lays out what he calls the sustainability operating system, from the drivers, the organization, the enablers, the pathway, the evaluators, to ultimate achievement of sustainability. The drivers. This is a champion. It is an approach, and it is establishing the accountability mechanisms. Enablers. This is an organizational structure, deployment and integration. The pathway. Does the company have the vision, the values, policies, the operating system standards, strategic planning for aligned priorities? And then the evaluators. Have you set indicators? Have you set goals? Are you measuring and reporting on your sustainability progress? And is there regular stakeholder engagement and feedback? The drivers. Again, these are the elements that assure that the organization is going to move steadily in the direction of sustainability. There's the champion within the company. There are also global and industry drivers. There's the competitive landscape. How is it that you are bringing management into this commitment to sustainability and accounting for what it is that you're doing? In any large company, essentially everybody that is in a position of making a decision, and many people who are not in a position of making a decision, have to be part of this conversation, from the CEO to people on the shop floor. Who's missing from this? Think about it in your organization. Who needs to be involved in a commitment to sustainability? The enablers, the organizational structure, the development and integration that allow a commitment to behave more sustainably, to move fluidly to its goals, to move along the pathway. To have the pathway, you have to have the vision, values, and policy, the standards, and the strategic planning. The evaluators, the elements that will gauge whether or not you're getting better or not. These are indicators. What are some indicators? Money, are you more profitable? How much waste do you have flowing out of your operation every day? There are companies that are now committing to being zero waste organizations. How much energy do you have to buy from outside? Or do you use 100% renewable energy, and do you use it efficiently? Every company will set a different set of indicators. Do all of the people who matter in this conversation have a role in helping to set the indicators, in evaluating whether or not they're being met, and in delivering on your sustainability promise? Again and again and again, you will hear that perhaps the most important is the champion, is the leader. At Unilever, for example, they have a group they call the hand raisers. These are people who have said, I will, I'm committed, I want to be a part of the sustainability journey. The drivers. There are the internal drivers, there are also these external drivers that mean that a company that ignores sustainability is at risk. It's risk of increased cost, it's at risk of increased competition, it's at risk of not understanding the world in which it's now trying to do business. You can lay these out in things like, what are your competitors doing, and what are the areas in which you choose to be implementing more sustainable practices? And this is a very simple graph that we've developed for some customers to allow them to say, yep, we've got this one nailed, or we have some work to do on this, and to understand what their competitors and peers in the industry are doing. Employee surveys. Your people generally know more about what needs to be done, about where the opportunities lie, than any group of management that come together to set forth a plan. Very good step when you begin a sustainability initiative. Survey your employees. Ask them, what does sustainability mean to you? Is this something that you care about? And how do you think we ought to go about implementing it? Some people will say, sustainability, it's those lefties. And some people will have more thoughtful answers, that it's a way of enhancing every aspect of shareholder value, thus enabling the company to continue doing what it's doing. But until you begin this conversation with the employees, you don't know where the landmines are. You can collect data and map it against existing sustainability frameworks. This is the Global Reporting Initiative's framework. You can map it against any number of frameworks. The Sustainability Accounting Standards Board is developing financial metrics for sustainability. There are any number of reporting initiatives, from Carbon Disclosure Project to sustainability certification programs. But decide which are the most important for your company, the most relevant to your company, and then begin your data collection with the ability to report to these other organizations in mind. There are going to be organizations within your industry that are a little further ahead than you are. In some industries, there are organizations that are setting up whole new sustainability standards. The Outdoor Industries Association has set up the Eco Index. They have now partnered with the apparel industry to have a whole certification program for companies in these industries. Prioritization and goal setting, engaging the right people. You've identified a champion. Now, who has to buy into all of this? Task forces. Who needs to be represented? If you put together a green team or a sustainability task force, you at least ought to have someone representing these areas. Otherwise, you, for example, put sustainability in the marketing department and you write a pretty glossy corporate sustainability report, but nobody in operations has ever heard of it. The people who hire people aren't telling prospective employees that you have this great sustainability program, that someone who works for you will have the opportunity to be a part of this. You may have waste all around you in your facilities. So when you put out your glossy sustainability report and people look at your operation, they go, they're not very sustainable. This sets up a cognitive dissonance that you'd rather avoid. Here is a sheet that allows you to think through all of these steps in a sustainability operating system, from the champion all the way to ensuring that all of the stakeholders are involved in the process. You can also use graphs to set out, to track what your goals are and what it will take to meet them, and then to prioritize the goals that have higher value but require fewer resources. This is often a low-cost, no-cost way of getting started, and you can then take the savings from these early goals and put them aside to capitalize progressively more ambitious sustainability measures. The Wheel of Change. A man named Bob Doppelt wrote a brilliant book, Leading Change Toward Sustainability, in which he analyzed what it takes to do change management, particularly focusing on changing the dominant mindset out of which the business that you have today arose. What do you have to do by way of rearranging parts of the system, or altering the goals of the system, or restructuring the rules of engagement of the system, shifting the flows of information, ensuring that there are feedback loops so that when you take an action, you can understand what the implications of that action are, and then adjusting the system depending on the information that you're getting back. It's been said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is the way your company is doing business now. It's a set of beliefs, of values, and then how the organization is configured to support acting on those values and beliefs. You can write a very pretty mission statement, you can hang it on the wall, but if that's not truly your culture, that won't be how you behave as a company. Developing a new corporate culture takes time. It takes leadership from the top. It takes everyone in the company understanding that this isn't going to go away. Oftentimes, a new CEO comes in, announces a restructuring campaign. Everybody in the company knows that if they duck long enough, it'll go away. It takes showing what you mean by this new culture, by managers, by your co-workers, reinforcing this new behavior through incentives, through rewards, integrating it into the business, and then assessing, is this working? Is this achieving what we want it to achieve? Strengthening the culture at every step, closing any gaps that result, and ensuring that you have a budget to support all of this. So many times we hear a company say, right, we're going to be sustainable. But there's no budget. There's no one in charge. There's no follow through. And you can imagine how long that lasts. The Wheel of Change is a process to change the dominant mindset, rearrange the parts of the system, alter the goals of the system, creating this new mental model within the company, a new framework around which to organize how the company does business. Restructuring the rules of engagement. This means developing strategies for changing how we operate and how we make decisions. And then shifting the flows of information and communication, relentlessly communicating what it is that is now expected. Correcting the feedback loops, adjusting the parameters, providing the means to make sustainability grow and stick over the long term. How does this work? Changing the dominant mindset. If there truly is a sustainability imperative, the senior management needs to convey to everyone in the company that this is something that we're committed to. We need to change the core identity of who that company is. Rearranging the parts of the system, organizing teams that are across the company and that have enough people in them from each division so that sustainability gets driven all the way into the system. Altering the goals by setting sustainability visions and principles. All of this creates this new mental model, this new framework. restructuring the rules of engagement, developing the strategies for changing the company, how decisions are made, shifting the flows of information. This provides how you test the new ways of thinking. It enables you to develop these new ways of thinking and operating. Finally, feedback and response to feedback. This is what sticks sustainability into an organization and ensures that it is still there 10 years, 100 years on. Doppelt describes a series of blunders that get in the way of implementing the wheel of change. The first is patriarchal thinking. The CEO knows best, and it's not the responsibility of any of the rest of us. Siloed approaches to environment or to people. We have a CSR department. They'll worry about that. It's really not part of my job. Lacking a clear vision throughout the organization of what sustainability means and what's in it for you. Confusion over what's driving this and what's the outcome going to be. What is it that puts the company at risk? What's the impact of global warming on our company? Lack of information, the inability of people in the organization to learn, the failure to create a learning organization where it's understood that we don't know everything we need to know, but we're going to go find it out. And then the failure to institutionalize sustainability. This was Mary's idea, but she's been gone for 2 years. We're not worrying about that anymore. Happens very often throughout companies, particularly in today's world with high turnover. The solution to patriarchal thinking is to change the dominant mindset using this sustainability imperative. Guys, we don't have any choice. Our business is at risk. Our costs are going up. We're not capturing the market share that we want. We're not getting the best talent. Walking through the business case reasons for sustainability and ensuring that everybody in the organization realizes this isn't a nice to have. This is how business is now done. The siloed approach. You'll need to understand who thinks they're in charge of what operation and reorganize the company so that every part of the organization has a commitment to sustainability and is involved with it. No clear vision. Make sure that the goals become clear. Set these sustainability visions and principles. Repeat them, keep bringing them back to the business case. Ensure that the strategies that you have in place to change the operational and governance processes are truly restructuring how decisions are being made, how the organization is operating. Lack of information, relentlessly communicate it, and create the opportunity for your people to learn. We're not all born knowing the problems that the world is now facing and that there are solutions out there. So rewarding a risk-taking culture, rewarding a learning culture, very important to overcoming lack of information. How do you institutionalize it? Embed it in standard operating procedures. Ensure that it's part of key performance indicators, that your employees are being rewarded based on their adherence to sustainability. So for each of these blunders, there is a corresponding solution. And for each of the sustainability operating system drivers, enablers, pathways, evaluators, there is a corresponding part of Doppelt's wheel of change. The people who are implementing this work in companies, in governments, in NGOs, in organizations, are finding that whatever theory it is they come forth with, there's a great deal of overlap. And it almost doesn't matter which of these approaches resonates most with you. It's worth understanding how what you've chosen to do correlates with what other people have chosen to do, and how your colleague, chief sustainability officers or sustainability champions, may be going about this approach, and having this dialogue of how all of this fits together so that you can learn from each other. This is a similar matrix put forth by the Center for Corporate Responsibility at Boston College. Essentially the same thing. They have companies that are compliant, engaged, innovative, integrated, and transforming, and then the various steps down the side of a citizenship concept, strategic intent, leadership structure, issues management, stakeholder relationships, and transparency, and then how those overlap. As you begin to implement sustainability in an organization, it's worth being explicit about which of these approaches you're using, understanding each of the aspects throughout it, being able to explain it to your boss, to the people you're working with, and being able to look across at other companies that are using perhaps a different approach and understand how what it is that they're doing relates to what it is you're doing. Yes, the problems are big, but the solutions are bountiful. Thanks so much for paying attention to how it is that you can begin to implement more sustainable practices throughout your organization. Remember, we talked about Bob Willard's Sustainability Advantage. We talked about Bill Blackburn's Sustainability Operating System in the handbook. We talked about Bob Doppelt's Leading Change to Sustainability, and we talked about our own natural capitalist approach. Good luck with implementing sustainability.